I work as a model. But I'd like to study. I thought with the prize money I could maybe come to England and... But it's all just people pushing you around and flashbulbs in your face the whole time.
Not so many flashbulbs for me.
Like I said, it's all... I mean, doesn't it make you angry?
You know, I think maybe it makes me more determined.
And that's a clip from Misbehaviour. I'm delighted to say that one of its stars, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, is with me in the studio. Welcome to the programme. And I feel as though it's amazing that you haven't been on the film show before, because it feels like we've been talking about you for years.
Have you?
We have. And I've just been going through our archive. So in 2013, when you were the star of Belle, Amara Santi was on the programme with Tom Wilkinson, and we were talking about what a great story that was, what a fantastic film. So then you were you're thinking, oh, right, let's look out for Gugu Mbatha-Raw. Matthew McConaughey was on, and we talked about Free State of Jones. I really liked Free State of Jones. I thought it was a real shame that people were going, what's all this about? I thought that was a terrific picture. Ed Norton was on the show a few months ago, so we spent a lot of the interview talking about you.
Motherless Brooklyn. Oh, he's amazing.
He is, and I thought that was a terrific film, and I listened to that soundtrack still.
Oh, it's
and
great.
Although we haven't talked about it because it's television, I thought the morning show was brilliant.
Oh, thanks,
in which you had a crucial role. So having talked about how good you are, we can now do the interview. But I felt as though we had to... Can't believe that it's the first time that Gugu's
I'm finally here in the studio.
So tell us about Misbehaviour and take us into the crazy world of beauty parades in 1970.
When I first read the script for Misbehaviour, I was just blown away that it was a true story. It's so entertaining and fun, but it's also part of our history. It's set around the Miss World competition in 1970, the most watched TV show in the world, and it was hijacked right in the middle by the newly formed women's liberation movement. They threw flower bombs on Bob Hope. There were water guns. It was a complete disaster as far as the competition was concerned. But it was also the first year that the first woman of colour, Miss Grenada, won the competition. So
that's a bit of a spoiler, by the way.
Well, I don't know. The posters around have got
That's
me
true.
with a crown on my head, but I play Miss Grenada, Jennifer Hoston. So in a way, it's a very intersectional, fascinating and very potent time in history for feminism and for representations of beauty in our culture and who gets to be celebrated.
So tell us about Jennifer Hoston.
Oh, she's a wonderful woman. I got the chance to meet her when we were doing the research. Initially, I watched the original footage of the competition, and then our producer, the wonderful Suzanne Mackey, who produces The Crown and Calendar Girls, had been in touch with her since the reunion, which was on Radio 4, where they gathered everybody together. I knew that she was open to talking about her time as Miss World. I emailed her, and then I actually rather cheekily suggested or asked her if she would meet me in Grenada. She lives in Canada now, but because the whole film was to be shot in London, I knew I wouldn't get a chance to go. So we had this amazing trip. We met there, and she was able to tell me all about her experiences. She spent most of her life, I think, after that, trying to prove that she was more than a pretty face. But she's had an incredible life, and she was an ambassador for Canada, diplomat, and now a trained psychotherapist and a mother and a grandmother.
So she's proved that many times over.
Yeah.
In fact, I listened to the reunion, that episode of the reunion.
Yeah.
It's from 2010, and it's a very good primer if anyone wants to listen to that before they go and see your movie. In fact, you listen to that and go, it's no wonder this has become a movie, because this is an incredible story.
Exactly, and that's exactly what our producer thought when she listened to it. And it's just amazing, I think, everything that was happening at that time. And especially today, I think it's very relevant to the conversations we've been having in our culture about the women's movement now and how that's evolved, the issues we're dealing with post-Me Too and the Time's Up movement, and, of course, women of colour and representation in the media. So I think it's very relevant.
Many people, if not everybody, will go and see your film and cringe at this Miss World. I mean, I know it's 1970. I know it's a long time ago. Our instinct now is, really? You had to do that? These women were introduced like this? And then I came out and thought, yes, but the Black and White Minstrel Show was still on the television. And the BBC carried on showing Miss World until 1988. So the changes and the improvements to culture have happened pretty recently.
Yeah, and it is a very different time. And you listen to the words Bob Hope used and his sort of pitter-patter jokes, and they're so offensive to us now, so deeply misogynistic. The way the women are announced alongside their measurements. And then, there's a scene in the film where all the women turn their bottoms to the audience, basically, to be sort of fully appraised. And we've sort of reclaimed that scene in the film in a way that I love. Our director, Philippa Lowthorpe, thought that was such an important scene to put the camera on the women and their faces, and so you really get to see the clenched teeth, the anxiety, the humiliation, but also I think it's important to show that side because it's really rooting the film in the female gaze as opposed to the
that's interesting.
chauvinistic.
Yeah, and because it's 1970, the civil rights movement in America has come up. So that's where the women's liberation movement came out of that. So that whole approach of protest, the end of the 60s, Vietnam War, it's right in the heart of that. And the fact that South Africa, because Peter Hain is represented in this film, South Africa, they get round the kind of, what are you doing having anything to do with South Africa by having a white woman from South Africa and a black woman in South Africa. And so this is to the point you were making early on. We're right at the heart of gender and politics and Me Too just in this one story.
Yes, and that was, one of the sort of nuances of the story that I was, personally really related to. My dad's from South Africa. He grew up under apartheid. And for me to be able to also have this story that protests were happening all over the world at that time. And as you say, two women from South Africa, Miss South Africa, who was the white contestant, Miss Africa South, which is so absurd. Again, it makes us laugh now, but that was really the situation then. And actually, the amazing thing is that Miss Africa South, the black contestant, came in second place. So, she really was representing it and really went very far in the competition.
Was there part of you, and I know you're acting, and I know you're making a movie, but you're still in a beauty competition, and I wonder if there was part of you that thought, I'm glad I'm doing this film. I think it's going to be a great film, but this does feel like a cattle market.
Yes, but I think I was buoyed up by the fact that I knew we had the amazing Philippa Lowthorpe, and it was going to be told by a woman, our director, our writers, Gabby Chappie and Rebecca Frayan. I knew that the point of view of the story was to humanize the women. We're not making... The beauty queens are not the enemy in this. And I think, to be honest, I, at first thought, oh, God, a film about Miss World, is that going to be really, what's this character? Is it going to have any meat to it? Or is the story going to have anything of depth? And I couldn't have been more wrong because it's very easy to judge people that enter into these competitions. But I think at that time, and certainly talking to Jennifer, it was a huge opportunity for her. She, coming from Grenada, it had never been in the competition before, that country, still ruled by Britain. So I think she felt like this was a moment for her to really be in the spotlight and an opportunity for her to have a bigger life afterwards, which she did go on to do.
It's a great ensemble cast of which you're a part of. Greg Kinnear, Reese Fans, who is hilarious.
Yes.
Keely Hawes, Jessie Buckley, Keira Knightley. And you used a word earlier about the film being nuanced, and I think that's one of the things that is a triumph in the film, because it's not just nuanced within the feminist movement and the disagreements between Jessie Buckley's character and Keira Knightley's character, but nuanced in the conversations that you have with Keira Knightley. And again, you've given away the fact that you win the competition, but you have a conversation when essentially Keira Knightley is saying, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And you frame your answer and your reasoning very much in a progressive mindset, that there are specific reasons and that progress in Grenada can happen as a result of you winning this.
Absolutely. And I love the film for that scene. I think it's such a powerful scene because, so much of the film follows the Libbers and the beauty queens, and there's all this, protest and pageantry and the theatre of it all. But, this one scene between these two women seemingly on opposing sides. But I think there's many ways to express your feminism. And I think one of the criticisms perhaps of this 1970s feminist movement is that it wasn't inclusive in terms of women of colour. It was very much viewed as sort of white middle class women, where arguably their rebellion is somewhat a luxury. And I think for me, what was interesting is, you know, the intersectionality of that conversation, which is women come from different backgrounds, they have different choices in life. And for Jennifer, she's breaking boundaries in her own way and arguably a pioneer. And just because she's playing a beauty queen doesn't mean that she's not also fighting her own fights.
When I was doing the work on this, having seen the film and doing some questions and reading some articles, I was, as one is prone to do, procrastinating and looking at social media. And there's a woman called Sarai Idan, possibly Idan. She's the current Miss Iraq, okay?
Okay.
And she tweeted this. On International Women's Day, I'm posting a photo that I, along with Miss Universe, were forced to take down from social media and their website due to an outrage. Brackets, how can a Muslim woman wear a swimsuit? This is a reminder, even in 2020, that many women have no say regarding their bodies. And I'm mentioning that just because I was inclined to think what we're watching in your movie is a period piece.
Yeah.
And it obviously is because it's 1970. And then here we go in 2020, and Miss Iraq she's sort of tweeting about the same issues that you're addressing in your film.
Well, I think it is very relevant. In this day and age, obviously, we still have problems and issues with objectification of women, you know, and I think it is about being culturally accepting to everybody's religion and background and what they're dealing with. So I think in many ways makes the film more relevant.
Do you think, again, period piece, fine, we've moved on, fine. But then I wondered if that our desire to have a beauty pageant has moved into Love Island and programs like that, because isn't that a slightly more nuanced, but that's a beauty parade, isn't it? It's a fashion parade.
Yeah, I have to confess I've never watched Love Island, but I do know that
You've heard about it.
I've heard about it, you know, and arguably, I mean, you know, social media can be used in that way. I have always tried to use those kind of platforms to talk about more than just an image or more than just beauty itself. I think people are always going to be fascinated by sparkly things. That's just human nature to a degree. But yeah, we have our own resonances, you know, and in terms of Bob Hope as well, you know, you think, well, people don't use misogynistic language anymore, do they? But then you look at many of our world leaders and a lot of what we've been dealing with in the past few years in terms of how women are treated and referred to, we've still got quite a long way to go.
What do we see you in next, Gugu, after this?
I am about to go back to the US to work on a top secret Marvel project, but I can tell you it's called Loki and it's with Tom Hiddleston.
That's kind of all we need to know,
That's
really.
all we need to know. Also coming up at the BFI Flair Film Festival is the world premiere of a film I did called Summerland alongside Gemma Arterton and Penelope Wilton.
So a busy 2020.
Yes, very busy.
Gugu Mbatha-Raw, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.